Hey everybody.
Fatbird Finds here.
I'm Mary Beth.
And I'm Laura.
And I'm Nikki.
Hello. How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Here we are again.
Yeah.
You don't seem
Third
sure.
The third time's a charm.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked.
Okay.
I feel like we were just here.
We were just here. Okay, so this is episode 3 of Mad Men season 1. This is the marriage of Figaro.
It is.
And just in case you're brand new to this podcast, we would just want to introduce ourselves really quick. We are Fatbird Finds. We have a YouTube channel where we sell, collect, distribute, and so forth vintage collectibles. We also sell on eBay. We would love for you to come over to our YouTube channel, subscribe, like, comment, and have a good time with us.
And we're just doing this for fun. The
We
Mad
are.
Men is for fun.
It's for fun.
The tie-in is the mid-century time frame, but
Yes.
but we're just having a good time with it because we love the show.
Yeah, in each episode, we will be sure to point out specifically items that we've either had or sold before, items that we might have for sale currently. So there is that tie-in, which Laura said, which is, so fun. Okay, so shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
All right, so we open the scene on Don Draper, who is on the train. It looks like he's on his way to work, and he is reading a magazine with an ad of a Volkswagen there on the screen. So again, if you're following on out there in podcast land somewhere, if you want to come over to YouTube, we are showing still images of the scenes that we're talking about, so it might be a fun way for you to follow along. But if not, no worries. We're not showing any video clips or anything else that you're missing. We just have those up for our YouTube viewers. So this ad, iconic. I love it.
Yes, it is.
And it's hilarious. So it's a picture of this Volkswagen. Obviously, it's in black and white. And below it, just one simple word with a period, it says lemon, which is hilarious to me. So I just love that.
It's the sign of a new generation. They
It
all
is.
hate it.
They do, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
And let's point out that this wasn't just created for the show. This is an actual ad.
Don't get ahead of me.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
gonna bring that up later.
I thought that you were like trying to get me to talk more about it.
No, I'm gonna bring that up in a minute.
Okay.
So but while he's on the train and he's looking at this ad, he gets interrupted by a gentleman. So this guy, you hear out of the corner of your ear, you hear this guy say, Richard Whitman? And Don just looks like stunned, like he's seen a ghost or something. And he looks up and there's this guy like looking at him. He's like, Richard Dick Whitman, it's you. Remember me? Yeah, we were in the service together, or whatever it is that he said. Mm-hmm. And Don, you can tell he is just like flabbergasted. He's like looking around on the train. He's like, oh God, is anyone hearing this?
Yeah.
And so
He puts out his cigarette. You know, it's serious business when that happens.
Yeah. So obviously he's like embarrassed. He feels on the spot. He's unsure. And he does engage with this gentleman. He's like, yeah, it's been a while. And the guy's like, you haven't filled out yet. You must still be a bachelor. He's like, no. You can tell he's like really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and he even lies. The guy tells him where he is living currently, and Don says, well, I'm upstate.
Is that not true?
No, because he's just outside Manhattan.
Okay.
I mean, he's in the country right outside Manhattan, but he's not upstate.
I got
Upstate
you.
would be like Albany.
I got you.
But he was trying to cover up where he actually lives so he doesn't maybe accidentally run into that guy again, or that guy didn't come looking for him or whatever. But also, this is the first time that we are introduced to Dick Whitman. We've been getting little hints all along the past few episodes that no, this man isn't who he says he is, and that he has some kind of colorful past.
Something else is happening for sure.
Mm-hmm, right.
And so this is your first giveaway, really. And we know now that this man, Don Draper, is also answering to the name Richard Whitman or Dick Whitman.
Dick Whitman, yeah.
So what's happening? So yeah, it's like
yeah, and
this starts to pique your interest, like
yeah. And then as this old army buddy walks away, we get a quick shot of the train conductor worker guy.
Yeah.
And he catches a glimpse of the lemon ad. So we're shown the lemon ad again, just right after this interaction, and the guy looks at it and chuckles. And are we to believe that Don himself is a lemon?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe.
He's a phony. He is, or possibly a phony.
We don't know yet.
We don't know. But it's implying maybe this guy is a lemon.
We don't know that yet. Don't give anything away.
Okay.
All right, next scene.
Now,
Oh,
before
sorry, Laura.
That's okay. When we're at the beginning of this show, I was just going to talk about the name of the episode.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to.
Yeah, I would love for you to
unless
do
you
that.
want to do it at the beginning of the second half of the show.
What do you want to do? You want to talk about it now?
You know what? Let's just wait. We'll do it after the office half of the show.
Okay.
And I'll do it to lead off the home half of the show.
Okay, and we'll preface this by saying that this episode is split into two very distinct halves. Sometimes we go back and forth, Dawn at home, Dawn at work, Dawn at home, Dawn at work. This one is split right down the middle. So you get the first half of this episode is Dawn at work and Dawn at play, so to speak, and then the second half of the story is at his home. So it's super distinctive, very split, very on purpose. Okay, so the next scene, we see the elevator, and Pete Campbell walks onto the elevator. So he's back from his honeymoon. And then, of course, the guys are in the elevator, and they're, giving him a hard time. How was your honeymoon? How boys are.
Trying to get the juicy details.
Exactly. And Pete's sort of reluctant, though, to give away the juicy details. He doesn't really want to. Any comments on the elevator scene?
I think the implication is in this episode that Pete's trying to turn over a new leaf. He's come in the office trying to play the part of the good, faithful husband, but he's not really selling it as well as he thinks he is.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. So let's see. So they come into the office. They're talking all along the way. You show them walking through the office, and everybody's real happy to see him. Everybody's putting on this, "Oh, welcome back, Mr. Campbell. How's it going?" And he, is real smug, and he's such a douchebag, and he's like, "Well, hi there." He's just real pompous sounding. Anyway, he's walking through the office, and he's like, "Why is everybody so friendly all of a sudden?" Everybody's like hovering around. So they're not exactly happy to see him. They're waiting to see what's about to happen. So he opens his office, and here's another one of those times that Matthew Weiner wants to shock the audience. So when he opens his office door, there is a family of Chinese people in his office, like with chickens, and it's all very racist on purpose looking.
Yeah,
Yes.
doing their dry cleaning.
Yeah.
While eating rice with chopsticks and chickens running around.
Yes.
And Pete comes out and he says something that I can't repeat. He doesn't say who put the Chinese people in my office. He uses another term that isn't as polite.
Right. I mean, I think we can probably say it, but it's not nice.
I won't say it.
Well, we won't say it, but it's anyway, who put these people in my office? And so
He knows it's a joke.
the whole office gets this huge laugh about it. Everybody's giggling. It's hilarious. And the audience is just left, and, you're pretty shocked.
Yeah.
So I'm throwing that scene up right now. You see the family in there. I think there's a rice cooker on the desk, and it's just, it's meant to be shocking and appalling, and it is.
Everybody's real proud of themselves.
They are. So, so then you see Peggy, Dawn enters the office, and Peggy goes to the desk to meet him. And Peggy says something that I think is really interesting. She says they hired a Oriental family to be in Mr. Campbell's office when he got back. So Peggy describes these people as an Oriental family, which I think is really interesting. So I'm going to let probably one of you guys talk about the terminology there.
Well, it's interesting that she, I think, is trying to clean up the language a little bit.
Yes.
And in so doing, she's still showing
her age, the date.
age, yeah, the date. That we don't say that. We don't use Oriental to describe people anymore. We still use it, I think, to describe
Objects.
So it's a little objectifying, which is, I guess, why it's not. One of the reasons why it's not used is just it's an old-fashioned term. It's a generalization, a stereotype of a group of people, and so for all kinds of reasons, it's not used anymore. But she was, trying to be better than the other word they said, and that's what she came up with. And yeah, it still, actually, a lot of people still would use that, thinking that it's the preferred term or the correct term today,
Right.
rather than just Asian people or Chinese people, like by their own country name.
Right.
But
Just an interesting side note. And I think that was purposefully put in there to show what was considered probably PC at the time. She was trying, like Nikki said, to clean that up, but still it's cringy language today.
Do you guys think even at just as far out from this episode as we are, however many years, like what is this? This is 2007 that they made this episode till today. I bet you they wouldn't make that again like that.
I don't know.
I just don't think they would do it again.
You
with
don't?
with all the racial references and stuff like that. I just don't think that they would. I mean, I'm not offended by it. I'm just saying I don't think that they would do it again. I just think it's risky.
It's risky always, but
they still make shows and movies where the N-word is used, of the time period.
Quentin Tarantino does it all the time.
Yeah.
But it's meant to be shocking. It's meant to be appalling.
It's meant to be appropriate of the time period. So you wouldn't do it unless you're trying to be inflammatory. And you wouldn't set a present day movie using that term unless you're trying to be inflammatory. But it's not the same if you're representing that time period when it was commonly said.
It's a good question, though. It's a good question. I like that question. All right, so let's see what happens next. So we are in Dawn's office. Let's see. Harry goes in there. Paul, I believe, is in there, and Sal. And you can tell that it's a meeting for Secor laxatives. So the joke in the office is sort of, they've been putting it off. Who wants to talk about laxatives? It's no fun to talk about laxatives. They've been blocked, quote unquote. Dawn is not amused that they are not doing their work. And then they reference the lemon ad again. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Sal holding up that Volkswagen ad again. So...
And Harry's already told him, he said, I told you wouldn't think that was funny.
So, Sal's like, we can be funny with the laxative commercial. We can make fun of it. And Dawn is just not having it. He's like, I don't really want to be funny. I want you guys to take this seriously. And anyway, the conversation really just continues with the laxative, or with the Volkswagen ad.
My notes say, Dawn is on edge and pissy with all the creatives. I mean, he's really, really annoyed by them. And really sharp with them. Sometimes he plays along, sometimes he doesn't.
Well, he's also, it's not just the laxative business with the creatives. He's not happy about that ad. Everybody's talking about how they're talking about it. They think it's clever. And it goes against everything that he would believe about advertising, how to do good advertising. And so he's annoyed by that. But then in the end, he says they must be doing something right because we've been talking about it for 15 minutes.
Yeah. That doesn't happen yet. I'm about to talk about that.
I'm sorry.
You keep stealing my thunder.
I'm just trying to move us forward.
Okay, so then we have a quick cut out to Peggy's office, and Pete is walking up. And he comes back. He's like, I'm back. Like, hey. And she's like, I know. But anyway, she looks really excited to see him. She's got like this huge smile on her face. She sort of bats her eyelashes at him. She is enamored, I think, of Pete. But anyway, he walks up and he starts to try to smooth things over about what happened on the night of his bachelor party. He's like, Peggy, yeah, about that night. He's like fumbling over his words, and she's like, yeah, it never happened. Yeah, I know it never happened. So remember those words. Those are words that we'll hear throughout the series as well. But she says that line, it never happened. And, he has this like look of relief over his face. And then he says the line, which I want you to remember. He says, well, the door looks a little bit open, meaning Dawn's door. I think I'll go in to the meeting now. Mm-hmm. So I want you to remember that line. The door looks a little bit open. I think I'll go in now. And when he walks away, Peggy's face just sort of turns forlorn. They're there talking, and then all of a sudden she's just got this look of like, yeah.
She looks like she was struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the nerve of him anyway. Like it made any difference whatsoever that he got married the next day. I mean, he's like, Peggy, I'm married now.
Yeah.
Well, crap.
So anyway,
What a jerk.
She just looks a little bit like somebody's punched her in the stomach, but I did want to point that out, that, that conversation began with this huge smile on her face. She was really happy to see him, and then ended in a gut punch. So,
I mean, it was so condescending.
Yeah.
Not just that he's dismissed her. I mean, I'm sure she's sad about that, but I mean, I think it's just like totally ridiculously embarrassing to her for him to condescend to her like that.
Yeah.
After they were both, willing participants in that event.
So we follow Pete back into the office. They're still in there talking about that Volkswagen ad. That's still the conversation that's happening. And Roger comes in, and he makes the statement of Birnbach. So Birnbach was a creative... Let's see, I've written it down so I don't misspeak. A creative director and the founder of Doyle Dane Birnbach, or DDB, which was a real agency. So that's a real ad that you're seeing, the Volkswagen ad. And then they talk about an ad that had been done previously, which I have here in this book, if you are following along on YouTube and can see that. It's an ad with a very, very, very tiny picture of a Volkswagen up in the corner with the tag "Think Small." So they reference this ad as well, which is a real ad in 1962. So I just think that that's brilliant. I like that they throw in the real advertising. Mm-hmm. I just love it. So that's my item.
And less is more is another tag to that.
We haven't gotten there yet. You keep stealing my stuff.
We need to be better briefed ahead of time. Like,
well, you have all the stuff.
Yeah, we're not privy.
I've
We're not
written-
privy to your genius.
I've written lots of notes, but yes, Laura's right. They do mention the less is more here shortly in a upcoming scene, so we will talk about that. Sorry. Are you mad at me?
No.
All right. So, and then they make the reference. They're like, love this ad or hate this ad. We've been talking about it for the past 15 minutes. So that has to tell you that something good is happening. Everybody leaves the office. They don't have anything for Secor laxatives, so that discussion is tabled. And then Pete sort of hangs around. Mm-hmm. So Pete hangs around in the office, and I feel like Pete acts like Dawn is like a father figure, sort of like he wants so desperately to have Dawn's approval. He wants so desperately for Dawn to pat him on the back.
Oh, definitely.
And he never gets it. He never gets that satisfaction. So, he's like, trying to fish for comments. He's like, yeah, I'm back from my honeymoon. And Dawn's like, I see that.
Yeah, Dawn loves to shoot him down.
and then he says something like, I don't remember exactly what he says.
I think he said, I missed you, Draper.
I missed you, Draper. That's what he says. And then Dawn's like, must not have been much of a honeymoon. And so, then Pete's just got this real sad puppy dog look on his face. Like, God, all I wanted was for you to say something. And then Dawn realizes that he's being a jackass. And he's like, how was it? Hope it was good. Whatever. Gives him a bone. Mm-hmm. Barely. Before, again, he's dismissed and Pete walks out. But I think that's an interesting...
Pete has, we get hints of, we've gotten hints of it already. Pete is just super entitled. So he's not used to people not fawning over him like that. So that's why he's so desperate for Dawn's attention. Pete comes from a rich family. He's gotten the job. He's young, but he's gotten this job as junior account man because, his family knows people in town and, is well connected and, is not it's not really on his merits.
Right.
And so he's just desperate for Dawn to like him.
And I also want to throw out there that while they're having this interaction, Dawn, one of his cufflinks falls off. So it falls onto his desk. He makes a remark, something like, in my family, men didn't really wear jewelry. But I think it's an interesting thing to note. It will come into play later. But I think it also signifies that things aren't always what they seem. He's this really sharp-dressed man, attractive on the outside, but it's imperfect. Something's not right. So
Yes, I agree completely.
Oh, thanks.
That was a very astute observation.
Are you making fun of me?
No, we hadn't talked about that one, and that was a good one.
All right, so the next scene, we're sort of in the break room with the girls in the office, the secretaries, and they are talking about a banned book. Nikki, I'm probably going to let you take this one away.
Well, thank you. Yeah, they're reading Lady Chatterley's Lover, or they're not reading it, in the break room. They're talking about how they've read it, and they're passing it around, and like other people, they're wanting to borrow it, and it was a very risque book. It was a banned book at the time, and it was I'll just read a little brief plot summary. It's a story of an affair, and there's a young married woman whose husband is paralyzed from the waist down, and so she takes up an affair with their gamekeeper. They're a rich family, and so they have a gamekeeper on the grounds, and so she starts an affair with him, and it's a real sexy book, and I guess it was the first time that kind of material was readily available, so that's why they're cackling over it and wanting to trade it back and forth. And but something interesting about the book that might tie into the theme of the show, which we haven't really touched on a whole lot, because the title of the show is The Marriage of Figaro, and throughout the episode there are comments about marriage and about wives, husbands talking about wives in like a derogatory, funny kind of way, and then later on we get like, anyway, it becomes a whole episode about marriage, and about cheating. So the book is said to, one of the main themes is a realization that the woman, the main character, cannot live in the mind alone. That she realizes, she has a realization of a heightened sexual experience that she hasn't felt with her husband, and it suggests that love requires the elements of both body and mind. So it's something that Dawn is going to wrestle with.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting tie-in probably to the very last scene of the show.
Yes.
And we'll get to that.
Or what happens with Rachel Menken.
Yeah.
Here in a little bit.
Cool. Thanks, Nikki. That was great information.
You're welcome.
Love it. All right, next scene. We're in the conference room, and we have another meeting with Rachel Menken. So this is a follow-up meeting.
Look at that hat.
Look at that hat.
Right before we leave that,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I had one thing to add to that.
Sure.
Joan actually says out loud in that scene, testimony, this is a testimony to most people thinking that marriage is a joke, is what she says about the book. So that also ties into the theme.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that made me remember when you interrupted me that we had not taken a break yet.
Oh,
So
well, see?
yeah, I'm glad you did.
I know. Great.
I love that. Let's take our first break. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that, Laura. Okay, so now then we're in the conference room. It's the follow-up meeting with Rachel Menken.
Look at that hat.
I'm telling you. You can't take your eyes off of that hat.
For those of you in podcast land, it's like a furry halo. If you can imagine that.
Man, she is strutting in like a peacock in this.
Yes.
So while we're entering this meeting, Harry is in the midst of telling a very off-color joke, in which the punchline ends with, I believe, the wife in the joke being dead. I don't remember the exact verbiage of the joke.
It's something like your wife and your attorney.
No, that's later.
That's the other joke.
Yeah. This one's a different one.
Okay. Well, your wife is dying, and your wife's doctor, comes to tell you what's happening with your wife, and you're playing golf, and the doctor says, I've got bad news. And anyway, see, this is why you have to write down the joke.
Yeah.
Never mind.
It's okay. It's not that big of it. I mean, it's just rude.
Yeah, the main point of the story is that it's very off color, and it ends with the wife being dead, which is, it's just like so cringy to me. But anyway, so there's an expert in this meeting that is reporting on data from Rachel Menken's competitors' stores. And then he says the line, less is more. So he's talking about minimalistic decor in the shops, shop windows, maybe mannequins with no heads, a very simplistic, minimalistic design, which ties into that Volkswagen ad. So less is more. I mean, it's just simple verbiage, just one line, lemon. That's all you had to say to know that they're making fun of themselves. So that less is more mentality goes throughout the whole show, which I think is great.
That's my pick for the name of the show.
So,
yeah,
less is more.
Yeah.
I love it. Nice one. That's good. So then, Rachel's listening to this very politely, and she's like, this is great. I'm really glad to have this data, but we're already doing some of the stuff that you're recommending we do. Did you even come to my store? And everybody's just looks real sheepish. And then Pete, asshole, he's like, I've been away on my honeymoon. He's perfectly cast. He's so perfectly cast because everything that comes out of his mouth is just so condescending. Mm-hmm. But, Dawn looks at her and he goes, I can assure you that nobody in here has been to your store.
Yeah, because the other guy says, oh, it's real nice. I've been there several times. And then Harry's like, yeah, it's great. It's a nice old place.
Nice old place. So Dawn goes to bat for the team there, and he's like, nobody's been there. I'm going to come make this right this afternoon. So that sort of ends. And then we transition to...
Don't forget about the little cufflink.
That's right. And I think I have a screenshot of that as well. I do. So also in the scene, thank you, Laura. Also in the scene, Dawn's cufflink falls off again. And falls off right there in front of Rachel. Mm-hmm. She sort of flicks it back to him and gives him eyes. He gives eyes back to her.
Oh, big time.
And Pete is noticing this flirty tension that's happening in the meeting. And he's, keeping tabs on it, so to speak.
Yep.
So then we transition. The meeting's over. And Dawn suggests that he will walk Rachel out instead of Pete. So Pete takes that opportunity to talk to Harry. He's like, Harry, come with me. And so, they walk to his office and they're talking about, have you ever seen him turn it on like that?
Yeah. He's like, did you see that? What was all that?
Yeah. And then they start talking about like things on the side, like women on the side, even though they're married. And go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that they aren't really talking about having affairs on the side. Harry is saying that when you're married, the best you can do or the most you can get is learning to flirt with women on the side.
And then he makes a point to say, I'm not very good at it.
Yeah. Well, this is important. It'll come back in a little bit when Pete leaves the office for the day. I think this gives Pete an idea that he hadn't thought of before in terms of Peggy.
Oh.
And I just wanted to say here that when Pete's talking back and forth to Harry, he's like, did you get a load of Dawn and Molly Goldberg over there? I mean, that is so rude. I mean, he's just like, it's just like a slang term because I looked it up. Molly Goldberg is just a Jewish character in a sitcom that was on a radio show from the 40s and 50s called The Goldbergs. Super popular. But it's just like, I don't know what to compare it to.
It's just a stereotypical, just nonsense thing. Yeah, slur just to shout out in your, yeah. Anyway, so that is that. But then Pete gets a phone call. It's his wife calling. And so he takes the call, and he's excited. He seems excited to hear from her. He's like, "Hi, honey," and he's talking to her, and you
But
can.
he's also right there in front of Harry.
Yeah.
Hello,
sure.
honey.
Did we mention earlier when he got off the elevator when he first came back to the office after the honeymoon that he said, "I didn't realize my wife was so funny. I actually am looking forward to going home."
I don't think that's
I think that
exactly
was
how.
here.
No, I think he actually says it.
Oh, it was
to
in Dawn. It was in Dawn's office.
Yeah. Anyway, so the whole episode, you're teetering with the fact: is he happy to be married or is he not?
Right.
It's a balance.
Yeah, because right then in Dawn's office, you know that he's not really thrilled about it.
So here in this conversation, Trudy's asking him what he wants for dinner, and he's like, "Dinner, ribeye in the pan with butter," and he's saying what all he wants for dinner, and then he hangs up the phone with her, and he says, "There's going to be dinner waiting on me when I get home," and so he just feels so manly in that regard, like that does something to his ego. Like, I'm gonna have someone be subservient to me. That just really does something for him.
yeah, he was like,
And
right? What do you think about that, man?
We explore a little bit of that in later episodes as well. So let's see what's happening next. All right, then we cut to Dawn goes to the Mencken's department store. So Dawn's at Mencken's. He meets Rachel there in the lobby. She's sort of giving a history of the store and of her store. Just talking about financial situations in the past. And then she begins to give him a tour of the store. So the first stop here is at the jewelry counter. And she asks the attendant there to see a tray of cufflinks. So she's thumbing through them.
She's pretty full of herself too, Rachel Mencken.
And can I just say, I feel like those two look so much better together than Dawn and Betty.
They have a lot of chemistry. When Dawn comes in at the beginning of this scene, he talks about, he tells her how fabulous she looks.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, well, this is my closet. You know? And then she's a little full of herself, and she says, the girl goes, "May I show you something?" She goes, "I make her say that."
But I don't know. There's just something about him when he's shown with brunettes. I just feel like that really compliments him in some way. The darker sort of mystery side of him. I feel like Betty's too traditional for him.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they even have similar facial structures.
They do, don't they? Mm-hmm. So, Rachel picks out cufflinks for him that is medieval knights, which the first time I watched this, I was like, that is so weird. Like, those are so tacky. Why would she pick those? But we were reading, I have a book here that's the Mad Men Carousel, and I was reading a little bit about what it had to say. And it sort of tied into the cowboy ad pitch that he gave. Was that the last episode?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the first episode.
Maybe, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But, about what women want. And I think it was the last episode. And they want somebody to bring the cattle home. And anyway, it was just, it was tying in that cowboy theme with the knight theme.
Well, yeah, and it's also about his armor. He's
Yeah.
very mysterious, so you can't get through his armor at all.
That's true. So, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Go ahead.
You didn't mean to show that slide?
No, not yet.
But we are going to talk about it?
We are.
Okay.
But
I'll
not quite
just
yet.
wait. I'll just wait.
So, I just want to make sure that I know what's coming up. So, I also want to talk about, they go up to the second floor, or the next floor, and there are beds situated in the background. So, they go up, and she's like, "I really like it up here. It's quiet." And then the attendant is sleeping in the chair on the job, and Dawn says something like, "It must be a tough job," and she's like, "I know." They're just sort of teasing at the fact that she's asleep. But in the background, it's the mattress area, or the beds area of the store. There's a big bed, a medium-sized bed, and a little bed, and on those beds are 3 stuffed bears. What does that make you think of, Nikki?
Goldilocks and the 3 Bears.
Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. So, I feel like there's something to be said here about trying to find the thing that's just right. Is he happy in his life right now? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like he's trying to find that thing that's just right. You know, it's either to this or to that. And I just feel like there's something to that. I don't feel like that was not on purpose.
Yeah, well, nothing is coincidental, at least not on this show, with as much care that they take in all the details. So no one just says to themselves, we've got to make a department store section for beds. How will we do that? And they just say, oh, let's do Goldilocks and the Three Bears because it'll just be, funny. Somebody was making a comment.
And they could have, earlier in the show done a tie on that with porridge. It could have been too hot or too cold, but no, they used beds because is his bed just right? Probably not. Something's not just right in his bed.
I guess so.
So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that for a second. So then briefly, we have a quick cut into the office. This doesn't last long, but it is important.
Yeah.
Pete is leaving for the day, and there's a group there of secretaries and copywriters who are about to go out.
It's the grand lot of them.
It's the grand lot.
Yeah.
So they're about to go out, and they ask Pete if he wants to go too. And Pete's like, no, I've got somewhere to be. Mm-hmm. But then he says to Peggy, he goes, you look nice.
Yes. Just moments ago, he was telling Peggy that what happened is in the past and we have to move on and that nothing's going to happen again and we're just going to forget that it ever happened. And then like whiplash, he whips back around and he's like, oh, by the way, you look really nice.
Mixed signals, man.
Mixed signals. And, you're like, where's that coming from? Well, Paul just got done telling him that even though he can't have an affair, or he shouldn't have an affair as a married man, that what a lot of men do is they flirt with women for fun, just to get the thrill of it. So you could see that was kind of like an idea that came across Pete's face when he heard that. He's like, huh, what an interesting idea. So I think he's trying it out on Peggy.
Yeah, I think so too. Mm-hmm. So that scene, of course, again, doesn't last long. And then we go back to Dawn and Rachel at Minkins. So now they're on the rooftop. And Rachel is telling Dawn that this is her favorite part of the store, the penthouse, if you will, of the roof. And she goes over to a kennel of dogs. So she's like talking to the dogs. You can tell she's very enamored with them. And then she says a quote.
They're the security dogs, in case you're wondering.
Yes, they patrol the store at night. So then she says a quote, which I want you guys to remember. She says, for a little girl, a dog can be all you need. So she was talking about how, when she was a kid and her dad worked a lot, I think she also mentioned that her mom died having her. Remember that as well?
You'll need to remember that for like several seasons from now.
Yeah. So her mom died having her, and she really felt a connection with these dogs. So I think she mentioned this is the third generation of these dogs. Obviously not the originals from when she was a kid, but she's very enamored with these dogs. And then on the rooftop, they share a very intimate moment. Quite.
Yes, quite. She is really taken with this kiss.
She really is. And after the kiss, I feel like this is interesting. After the kiss, he fesses up. He's like, I'm married.
I think he really likes her.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm just saying, as opposed to just, a fling or whatever, I think that he really likes her and he's like, oh, dang.
Shoot.
That was really something and I'm just going to have to tell her because,
and he didn't,
I can't really sustain this.
Right.
And he didn't tell her earlier because he wanted to make sure he got that kiss. He didn't want to give her any reason not to kiss him.
Right.
I don't know, but I mean, but it could be the fact. I mean, I think they were just really in the moment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But then she's like, well, now what? Am I supposed to just follow you around in your life? And anyway, she just sort of leaves him up there to ponder. And then we see him on the train ride home, and he's obviously very distraught looking. Mm-hmm. In this scene, he lights a cigarette and he's just got his head in his hands, and you can tell that he's just got tons and tons of stuff on his mind. Another interesting fact here, the person who's checking tickets taps him on the shoulder and he whips around. He's sort of startled and he's like, oh God, is it going to be that guy again that called me Richard Whitman earlier today. So he looks startled, but it's just the ticket guy, and he's like, hey, you dropped your paper. And he's like, thank God. I don't have to deal with that again.
Yeah.
So I just think that's an interesting segue. Also, first half of this obviously shot mostly in the office, but the rest of it was shot at night. And so the next transition is the next morning. So the rest of the show is shot in a different way. It's a lot more light. It's a lot more pastel, a lot more colorful.
And so right here's a good time, I think, to talk about the name of the show and stuff before this second half.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. So The Marriage of Figaro, I thought it would be interesting just to talk about the basics of really what that is. So it's an opera written by Mozart, 1786. It's actually based on a stage play a couple of years earlier, and I'm not going to try the foreign pronunciation. Y'all don't want to hear me do that. But the translation is The Mad Day, or The Marriage of Figaro. So the Mad Day, see, all this happens in one day. We follow Dawn completely, well, not it's all
Probably more like 24 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but definitely the last half is one day.
Yeah.
And it is considered one of the greatest operas ever written. It appears consistently in the Opera Base list of most frequently performed operas. In 2017, it was voted the best opera ever written by 172 opera singers. One of the supreme masterpieces of operatic comedy. And so it's just, I was going to read, if you guys will let me, I was just going to read a quick synopsis of the story, and then that will show how it ties into the episode.
Would love that.
Okay, so The Marriage of Figaro continues the plot of The Barber of Seville several years later and recounts a single, quote, day of madness in the palace of Count Almaviva near Seville, Spain. And then it goes on to say that, so there's a count and countess, and they have servants. And it says, Figaro, Dr. Bartolo is seeking revenge against Figaro for thwarting his plans to marry Rosina himself. So the count wanted to marry the servant. Okay, hang on. Okay, and anyway, let me skip. I didn't want to make it too long. It devolves into a scheme. The guy turns into be a scheming, bullying, skirt-chasing baritone. Having gratefully given Figaro a job as head of his servant staff, he's now persistently trying to exercise his right to bed a servant girl on her wedding night with Figaro's bride-to-be, Susanna, who is the Countess's maid. He keeps finding excuses to delay the civil part of the wedding of his two servants, which is arranged for this very day. Figaro, Susanna, and the Countess conspire to embarrass the Count and expose his scheming. He retaliates by trying to compel Figaro legally to marry a woman old enough to be his mother, but it turns out at the last minute that she really is his mother. Oh. And through the clever manipulations of Susanna and the Countess, Figaro and Susanna are finally able to marry. So it's a comedy, it's a farce, it's they make jokes, it's like things gone wrong all day, schemes gone wrong, and
particularly in relation to marriage and affairs, like somebody's trying to I think that's what gets really ties into what's happening in this episode.
Definitely. Well done, Laura.
Yeah, and then they are actually playing the music at Sally's party.
Yes.
From the opera.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's take our next break, and we'll discuss the second half of the show right after this. All right, so next morning, Dawn wakes up. Sally is running into her room. She's really excited. It's her birthday. So she's super excited, and he's adorable with her.
How do you spell pony?
Yeah. Betty's like, you're going to need to put together the Playhouse. And then Dawn's like, how am I going to put together a pony? And she's like, a pony? And she's so excited. And Betty's like, great. Thanks a lot. So.
And then I was just going to say, this is my favorite. I mean, I picked this out as a quote from the show. He says right then, she'll forget all about it when she sees the playhouse. But I think it's symbolic of the whole episode. I think the playhouse is symbolic of the whole episode. They're playing house. It's all a game. It's all a show. It's what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
This is the way you have to act it out. She'll forget about what I promised her before when she sees her house and her stuff and her things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty symbolic.
Absolutely. So then the episode shifts. We see Don outside. He's putting together this playhouse, and it cut several times to him going to the garage to get a beer. So he is spending the entire morning day drinking, beer after beer after beer, tons of them. Sally and Bobby run outside, and she's really excited to see the playhouse. She's like, it's a playhouse, and she's really excited. And he's like, you're not supposed to see this yet. He's like, go get me another beer, by the way. So he just continues to drink and put this thing together. Let's see what's next. Francine. Oh, Francine. So Betty and Francine are in the kitchen, and they're preparing snacks and food for the party. And they're basically just gossiping, though. And Francine asks, who else coming? They're trying to figure out if they've got enough food.
How many are we?
And Betty's naming off everyone who's coming. And then she mentions Helen Bishop. And Francine's like, you didn't. So if you remember from the previous episode, Helen Bishop is the divorcee who moves in down the street. And Betty's like, well, I had to. She saw me buying balloons. I had to invite her. I didn't have any choice. So again, then we cut back outside to Don, who's still putting that playhouse together, still drinking, which is great. He goes in the house to get cleaned up. We suppose that he's got it all taken care of. And I think this is hilarious because he goes into the powder rooms, use the restroom. He washes his hands, and then he's just like holding his hands up in the air like, now what do I do? She's got the nice towels out. Mm-hmm. Did you guys have like nice towels at your house?
Yeah, she's already told him. You can tell. She's already told him he's not supposed to be touching.
Oh, he's
anything
well trained. He's like... Yeah. Looks like a surgeon. He doesn't want to touch anything. And anyway, finally he just dries his hands off on his shirt. But
look at the little towel rack that has the little clippy hands.
That's hilarious. I love that. But anyway, I just think that that's funny and dated. I mean, does anybody do that anymore? Put out their nice towels and their little just soaps.
Those little fancy soaps.
Yeah. That's
no,
just
I guess you go get your not Bed Bath and Beyond, but what do you call it? The Bath and Body stuff. That's the equivalent today. You go get your nice Bath and Body out and, lay down a towel.
So the party begins. The people have arrived. The kids are running around, screaming, whatever. The adults are all being served mint juleps. We also see Betty pour like almost a whole fifth of probably bourbon or something into this punch that she's making for the adults.
It's that time of year.
So she's letting everybody know what's been prepared, what's happening. They're making small talk, which is always just so freaking uncomfortable. Who wants to small talk with people? And I think this part's funny. So Don is talking to this dude who's at the party, and he's referencing an ad that he saw. He's like, we just saw this ad with blah, 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 and this and that. It was really funny, Don. Did you do that one? And he's like, has this like ridiculous shit-eating grin on his face. He's like, I haven't seen that one. It's like, just because I'm in the biz doesn't mean I see every single, it's just so ridiculous.
He has not one single interesting interaction with these people at this party.
He is so bored. He is so over it. And let me just add that he continues to drink. So when Betty's walking around with those mint juleps, he puts down his beer can on her tray and takes a drink. So it's just one right after the other. It's just nonstop.
They're all doing it, though. Even Francine. Do you notice that? Francine's got a cigarette in one hand and a drink in the other.
And pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm just making sure that I don't miss something here in my notes. Let's see. Okay, so then we go to the women who are in the kitchen having a conversation, and the doorbell rings. Oh, I forgot something. When the guys are in there drinking and talking and making their stupid small talk, one of them tells another joke.
Oh, yeah.
So this time the joke is, your wife and your lawyer are drowning. You have a choice to make. Do you go to lunch or a movie?
Yeah.
And so we were watching that the other night, and I was like, I don't get it.
Mary Beth's like, what? What is he? I don't get
We
it.
had to explain it to her.
I was like, I don't get it. And they're like, well, the wife is so unimportant that there's no choice to make.
Yeah. He does, the husband doesn't want to save the wife. He wants to go to a movie.
So it's the second joke of the episode where the wife has died, which is ridiculous. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out.
And
as well.
everybody makes fun of lawyers for being like kind of low life. I mean, which is not true, but that's what the jokes always were.
Yes. So again,
So bad.
women are talking. There's a doorbell rings, and it's Helen Bishop. So Helen Bishop comes in, and she says, quote, "When the door is a little bit open, you're supposed to come in." End
According
quote.
to Glenn's.
According to Glenn. So that's the second time we've heard that.
Yeah. And I don't know what that means. And I think that you all out there should comment in the comments below this video on YouTube and let us know what you think, because I'm tired of thinking about it, because I just can't, and I know it means something.
So again, to recap, the first time it was said was when Peggy was talking to Pete, who was loitering outside Dawn's door, and he says, well, it looks like the door's a little bit open. I think I'll go in. So that's the second time that's been said. So I don't know if these two halves of this episode are supposed to mirror each other in some way. And maybe we're seeing that as a mirrored scene. I'm not sure. But I'm dumbfounded by that. And that is, that's on purpose for some reason.
Absolutely. Because neither time that quote happens, neither time does it play any material part of the scene.
Yes.
The scene could go on without it. It contributes nothing.
Yeah, like nobody cares that they came on in.
Right.
Yeah, like she didn't have to say that when she walked in, and Pete didn't have to say that before he went into the office.
Right. All right. So as you can see here, Helen, makes an excuse about her present. It's got Christmas paper. She's still unpacking. She doesn't know where anything is. And can I just say, Helen Bishop, damn, she looks good. She is that popped collar and that outfit, and she's got on slacks where every other woman in that place has on a dress.
She put the sweater on to tone it down a little, Mary Beth.
She did, but she's looking really good, and the men notice. So when they're going around introducing Helen to everybody, those men are looking at her like she is a piece of meat. And she's just so different from the rest of the women that we see here in the episode. Again, having the slacks on, again, not an accident. But I just love that. So we're going to take our third and final break, and we'll be right back. I also want to mention that Don has been finicking with a record player, and he puts on like an opera channel, and it's the opera. It's the opera of the episode.
The Marriage of Figaro.
Yeah, that's what I said before.
Did you?
Yeah, they play it all the way through the party scene.
So anyway, he's fiddling with the hi-fi, and he does play that. So that's happening in the background. Also, I mentioned earlier that the men are looking at Helen like a piece of meat. And then it cuts to a scene where they're making jokes about her. So they're like, have you seen the car she drives? And it's a Volkswagen.
It's the lemon.
It's the lemon that they referenced earlier in the episode. So she drives a Volkswagen Beetle. But they're talking about her having no chance of getting a man because there's no back seat. So they're just being really tacky toward her, but all the while looking at her like they want to be with her. So they're just being real tacky. So then,
I really don't know. I think it's kind of I don't know, something weird about the show that she is in their neighborhood. I mean, I don't know how in the world she could afford to live in the same neighborhood as Don Draper by herself.
Well, she dresses really nice, though. I mean, she dresses really nice. Here in the next episode where she's talking to these women, they're all talking about where they went on their honeymoon. She mentions that she went to Paris. So she's got some culture about her.
Yeah, I think maybe she got all that money in the divorce.
Maybe so. So anyway, in this scene again, they're talking about like where they went on their honeymoons. Betty, she's not really thinking, and she looks over at Helen. She's like, "Where did you go?" And then she immediately like gasps, and she's like, "I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking." And Helen's like, "It's okay, don't worry. I went to Paris. It was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for anything." So she's real cool. She is being really confident. She is not letting these women shake her at all. And they're asking, they end up asking some, sort of intimidating questions, because they're talking about her walking, and they've made a comment about this before. Have you seen her? She's always walking somewhere. Where's she going? And so they ask her, and they're like, I think I see you walking sometimes. Where are you going? She's like, she's got her cigarette. She's like, I just like walking. Well, but where are you going? Nowhere. It just clears my mind. Einstein does it. And anyway, she's just real cool and collected.
But they are just dumbfounded by the idea of going for a walk by yourself for no reason. And it's almost like, it got this Pleasantville kind of vibe for me. It seemed almost put on, like in that movie, where they're obviously, trying to make a joke out of how they don't understand.
Yeah.
What it is to be free and to have freedom and do what you want. And,
I just like to walk.
And they're like, but where do you go? Like almost like that, so they're pointing out that it's never occurred to them, and they get really kind of pissy about it, about, there must be something wrong with her, is what they're implying, that she does this. And it's almost like, I think they're jealous.
Yeah.
That they've never thought that they could do that before, and that she's just doing it, and there must be something weird about her that she's doing it, but that's just because, they're not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
I love this scene in the kitchen. Of course, the ladies have all gathered, and that happens every time. All the women end up in the kitchen. We like to point out things that we know about from the mid-century period, and there's a Pyrex bowl from the primary collection, super popular. In fact, we sold one of those today, Mary Beth.
Just today?
At Lehman's.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
No way.
And then when we did, my mom said, well, it's embarrassing to tell you this, but she's like, I have that bowl, and I got it when I got married. And she's like, so I don't even know. I'm not even counting how many years ago that was, which is probably about then.
But I feel like of all the Pyrex patterns there are out there, those primary ones, I feel like everybody had those in their house.
Everybody
like everybody's
had 'em.
grandmother or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they were yellow, green, red, and blue, right?
Yeah. And I look at that picture of that kitchen, and it's so traditional and everything, but it just, all of a sudden I've just thought, you know what? This right here is why every kitchen, every time you see nowadays a kitchen or a kitchen makeover, it's huge. It becomes the most important room in the house. It's because women have taken over. You know what I'm saying? Like now it's the most expensive room in the house, the most important room in the house, usually the prettiest room in the house. Everybody says they got to have space to entertain in the kitchen.
Right.
Yeah. So I just think it's funny. It's real tacky in this picture.
I actually like it. It reminds me a lot of my grandmother's kitchen.
I'm sure it does, but it was probably chic for the time.
No.
Oh, I think so.
And it's just so traditional. It's just not the modern chic, like apartment living kind of chic.
Oh, I hear
It's just
you.
very traditional.
I hear you, but I can also attest that my nanny, my grandmother, she was extremely proud of her house and that kitchen. I heard her say more than once, this gentleman, whoever it was who designed her house and did the blueprints for it, this is top of the line. She was real proud of that at the time. So,
and just because it's a traditional instead of a modern style doesn't mean that it's not, top of the line, I guess, for that for that style. Because Don Draper wouldn't have anything but the best, for his family.
I love it. It's very nostalgic looking for me. So then we transition, and Betty has asked Don to take some video. So she wants him to get the camera out and take videos of the kids. And so he just takes his drunk self.
I mean, he's loaded, and he's having a great time.
P.S. Before you get into that, I'm so sorry. I just have to point out that gorgeous Chinese Chippendale break front back there behind Don.
Oh, yeah?
That's top of the line right there. That's beautiful.
Is it?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Good eyes there, Laura. But he is just absolutely blitzed out of his mind, just walking around with this camera, imposing on everybody that he can find, taking these silly videos. And while we're looking at Dawn taking the videos, we're hearing like the ruckus of the kids running and whatever's happening. But when we see the world through the viewfinder, through the camera, we can hear the opera playing.
Correct. And I'll take this opportunity to chime in about the fact that we're not just seeing this shot of Dawn, seeing Dawn with the camera taking video. We actually are given the view of Dawn, what Dawn's seeing through the viewfinder. So it looks like a home movie in a little square.
It's got the little clicking in the background.
Yeah, and I mean you can't ignore, if you know anything about, or if you've ever had a class in college about psychoanalytic theory, the fact that Dawn is a man with a mysterious identity who has possibly a fake identity and is trying to, recreate his identity. He doesn't know who he is. We don't know who he is. And here he is gazing at others, which the gaze and the other, and you are defined by what you are not, and you gaze at things you desire, and you desire them because they define what you are not and what you don't have, and that whole kind of thing. And I think that is definitely not an accident. In other words, I don't think that they would have done that in the viewfinder shot if they didn't want you to realize that he's gazing, that because it's more than just the kids. In a minute here, he takes a shot where he catches one of the married couples making out passionately, and he's spying on them. He's peeping, and then he looks disturbed. He puts the camera down, and he realizes what he's seen, and it has an effect on him because he realizes that's what he wants and what he doesn't have. And
that was great. I feel like we're done here. Bye.
Yeah, well, it's a running theme throughout the show.
That was great.
It's interesting too, though. They didn't. I think this is one of the brilliant parts about the show. They took something that is very, it was very common occurrence for the women. For the women to be like, "Honey, why don't you take the pictures? Let's use the camera." It was just like that movie. Everybody was always wanting to get the movie camera out, So I think it's great. They used something that was very mainstream and then did that really insightful, piece with it.
But he's also very robotic throughout this episode. Like, she's not nagging him, but she's always got something that she wants him to be doing in this episode. Go do the playhouse. Go get the camera. Go get the cake. And he's very robotic. He just does it. He doesn't question it. He just he's playing along. Mm-hmm. He's playing house. So
yes, exactly. Yeah. And also I love when he's filming, when you see him through the viewfinder, Helen's running by like this. I wish I had a quarter for every time my mom runs past the movie camera in our kids' photo. Oh, honey, stop! Don't show me. It's so funny and cute.
That's great. So then we have a little interaction between Helen Bishop and Carlton, who is Francine's husband. So Carlton has been looking at her all this episode, like she is something that he desires. He goes up to her innocently enough to him and says something like, my heart aches for that little boy of yours. I'd love to, toss the football around with him some Sunday, take him to the beach. Just whatever. Well, she sees through that immediately. She is not one of these women who is just going to swoon over some man, saying something like that to her, which is what he expects. He expects her to be like, "Oh, wow. Thanks, mister." She's not having it. She's like, "Oh, and I'm sure I would love those visits, and I'm sure I would love to go to the beach with you, and here's what that future would look like," and blah, blah, blah. And she starts rattling off like all of the steps that would occur.
Being a real smart ass about it.
Yeah. And he's like, hey now, I don't want you telling Francine something that I said something that I didn't. And she's like, okay. She's like, she is just so awesome in this episode. I really have a thing for her, I think.
Yeah, and the whole time the Marriage of Figaro music is still happening in the background, and Dawn is recording it, so he's like showing us the Marriage of Figaro like it's a play that he's capturing. And we have all these marriages, these husbands and wives that are mismatching their pairs. You know, they're talking to, you know, they're just doing their thing.
Yeah, and this is the scene where he zooms in on the other couple who's at the party, and they're actually happy. You know,
they are.
They share a kiss, and it's not just a peck. It's not just a passing kiss. I mean, they are in the moment.
Similar to what he and Rachel had.
Yes, very intimate, very prolonged, not an accidental kiss, very intentional, and then has this like look of wonder, look of what is my life. You know, he's just contemplating after he looks at that. It's just like, what am I doing here?
Yep.
So
he gets out of there.
well, not yet, almost. So then we're gonna follow Dawn outside. So we see Dawn outside, and he's watching the kids play house. So this is great. So we've mentioned the fact that the adults are playing house and playing marriage and going through the steps. So the kids, this is hilarious.
It's so funny.
The kids throughout this episode, you know, they say the funniest things if you're listening in the background.
Yeah, the girl says, I guess Sally says, "You tinted the car."
And then one of them's like, "I like sleeping on the couch."
And take your shoes off.
And "I don't like your tone." And so it's just hilarious. I mean, they're listening.
They're parroting their parents.
Yeah, look, there's the little car, there's the little carriage. Mary Beth, you know what this reminds me of? I just thought of it because I just saw it here. You know that my book, Mommy and Me, my favorite book that we looked for, the little golden book, that's what they're doing. You know, that's what that looks like.
Well, they're learning the ropes.
They're
learning the lessons here about what is expected of a home, playing house, and what's a marriage.
And they're doing it out there. So interesting side comment. Helen comes out and joins Dawn out there on the deck. And she is like, interesting crowd in there, you know, because she's been listening to those women bicker on about whatever. And then Carlton comes on to her. Interesting crowd out there. And he's like, same crowd out here. They're talking about the same old shit out here, these kids. And so that's hilarious. So the women, again, are inside. They're talking about Helen after she left, you know. Can you believe her and whatever, and Glenn is so wrinkly, doesn't she have an iron? And just bad mouthing her to death. And Glenn comes in and asks where his mom is, and Betty's like, I don't know, honey, maybe she's in the dining room. So Glenn is looking for his mom, and then they find out that Helen is outside with Dawn. And the women are all looking out there at Helen with Dawn, like viciously, like
they're like, Betty,
like vultures.
Betty, you need to come take a look at this.
get on this.
Like, Betty, you need to go out there and get your man before she does.
Divorcee gets him.
And the interesting part here is, you know, Dawn would normally be turned on by that type of woman, but he's not really. I think it's because he's so distracted by Rachel, and he's so distracted by this thought of his marriage and what he really wants, and he doesn't really want to be at this party. And I think he's just really distracted, because I feel like probably normally he would be really into her.
Yeah, and I've read something that says they bond. I don't really feel like they bonded in this scene.
Not really. I don't think
And
really.
he just walks off of the set without even, walks out of the yard without even looking at her.
Yeah, and he's not really looking at her here. And maybe they bond in their disdain for the party,
maybe,
but they don't really share much in that short amount of time.
Yeah.
So Betty comes out, visibly she's shot in between them, coming between this conversation, and she's like, can you go get the cake? Can you get out of here and go get the cake? And again, robotically, he does. He gets up, he leaves to go pick the cake up. And then we have a quick cut to these kids that are running through the house. And this is really something. So the kids are running through the hallway. One of them knocks a drink over, and this man grabs this kid by the arm, smacks him across the face, and is like, "You need to be careful." And so we're watching this, and we're like, "Shit."
Is that his kid?
Yeah.
Surely.
Why did he hit his kid?
Yeah.
And then this other guy walks up, and the man says, you need to tell your kid to be more careful. So he smacked him right in front of his dad.
Yeah.
Smacked another man's kid. And you think that, and the dad comes up and he's like, what's going on here? You think that he's like, oh, he saw the smack and he's unhappy about it. And what he really wants to know is what his kid did. And he finds out that he, spilled something. And he says,
Did you say you're sorry?
Yeah, did you say you're sorry? And the kid doesn't say anything. And the dad's like, do you want some more? Like, I'm going to smack you. You think that was bad. I'm about to hit you harder. And anyway, they diffuse the situation. And the dad says, go get your mother and have her come clean this up. It's just like...
the dad says, yeah, do you want some more? And the other guy's like, no, he heard me.
Yeah. The other guy's like, oh, God, this is going to turn into like,
Let me ask you guys a question. Would your fathers have allowed another person to discipline you, or would they have retaliated, like, against the other person? I can wholeheartedly, fully say that I think my dad would have been okay with it.
Would let another man smack you in the face?
Maybe not smack me in the face, but discipline me or yell at me or...
Well, yell at you, correct you, but not smack you in the face.
Yeah, maybe not slap me in the face.
I think that if your dad were hearing this right now, he would just be so sad that you would think that about him.
I think it was very... like we've said before, I was close to this age period, and I don't remember. I was never smacked in the face.
Right.
No kid was ever smacked in the face around me.
Right.
So I think that was extreme.
Right.
And no, my dad would have come undone. He might have smacked me in the face, but sure wasn't going to let somebody else do it.
Yeah.
I just have no. I'm sure not. I'm sure that wouldn't have been he wouldn't have allowed that.
Yeah.
I really. I just have no. I have no basis for imagining that, really. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see what's next.
Although I will say, fathers to sons was different than fathers to daughters.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
I think that fathers to sons, it's kind of that men among men kind of mentality where the boys were supposed to man up and be and act right, and if not,
especially I think maybe on a ball team. Wouldn't you say like
Yeah.
coaches of boys are allowed to treat the boys like the father of the boys would treat them?
Maybe.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. So then we get a clip of Don coming home with the cake. We see him pull up to the house there with the balloons. And he just keeps on going. He slows down for a second, contemplates his life, and keeps on going.
My question is, couldn't he just leave the cake?
Yeah, really.
Like, leave it out on the sidewalk.
God, what a jerk. I mean, he not only just abandoned Betty, but he took the cake. He took his daughter's cake.
He
the party's
did.
ruined.
I mean, he went to get it. He picked up the cake. He came home with it and then decided to just keep going. Mm-hmm. So he's gone. And then we cut to the women in the kitchen. The men are kind of hanging around, and Betty's on the phone, and she says, okay, thanks. And she says, well, she said that the bakery said that Don picked up the cake an hour ago. Do you think he's had an accident? I mean, Betty's thinking she's not thinking the worst.
It's so funny to think about, to realize Betty, how different she is here compared to how she would react to the same situation in a couple of seasons from now. Like, she's so naive here and so trusting and sweet. She's like, maybe he had an accident.
Yeah.
Instead of like screaming and slamming the phone down.
And so one of the guys comes into the kitchen and says, am I the only person here who knows there's not going to be a cake? Don Draper, you're a first-class heel, and I salute you.
Yeah, God.
Yeah. Like, damn, I wish I could get out of this party.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. God, I wish I could have gotten out of here an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
In this episode.
So then Helen Bishop is like, I might have a cake. And Betty's like, really? And she's like, yeah, a frozen Sara Lee in my freezer.
Nobody doesn't like Sara Lee.
Thanks. That was great. Maybe we'll get sponsored.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? So Helen goes and gets this cake out of her freezer. And then we have a cut to everyone singing for She's a Jolly Good Fellow. And Betty is cutting this cake. They've written Sally poorly on it with
the whipped cream.
Whipped cream. This cake is like incredibly sad looking. I've always thought in this scene that Betty is struggling to cut it. So she's got this huge knife and she's cutting this cake and she's struggling. And I've always assumed that it was because the cake is frozen. But Nikki and Laura brought up the fact that her hands might be doing that thing again.
Yeah, it's because Dawn's doing that thing again.
Yeah, her hands are directly related to her marriage.
So she's having some issues there with her hands.
And let me just say, I think this is brilliant.
Okay.
Because that is no coincidence that Helen steps in to save the day after these bitches have been talking about her all day. And she saves the day with a frozen cake, which is so frowned upon. I mean, it's like, you are not a good mom and a good wife if you've got frozen food in the freezer. Like, that's only desperate times, call for desperate measures kind of thing.
I got you.
And so the women would never have none of them have a frozen cake in their freezer they can give Betty because no, they wouldn't have that.
Right.
But they sure did need it.
Yep.
So it's just very funny that Helen doesn't care. She doesn't give a crap.
No.
Like Francine would have never gone and got a frozen cake out of her freezer.
Helen's a catch. I'm here for Helen.
But the kids don't care, so she really saved the day with the cake. But
definitely. All right, so then we see where Don really is, and he is like hanging out under a bridge. Or what it appears to be a bridge.
Yeah.
You see these caution lights flashing, and there's about to be a train go by. So he's in his car smoking, most assuredly, and you see this train go by. So it's sort of a scene at a crossroads. Maybe he's at a crossroads in his life. He's definitely contemplating his life. But I also think that he's watching this train go by and he's like, I wish I were on that train. I wish I were going somewhere. The carousel book that I referenced earlier, I disagree with it in this scene. The carousel book says that he's contemplating suicide here.
I've read that several other places.
I don't think so.
It must be commonly known, though. It must be in an interview or whatever with
Maybe.
with the writers, because they had several different sources say that.
And not to,
but they do say suicidal, like question mark.
Yeah.
It's not. They don't say for sure that's what he's doing, but they suspect that's what he's doing.
And not to give too much away here, but maybe he's thinking of the death of one of his alter egos here. Like maybe he's trying to leave someone behind or pick up with a new life or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, he
has a fascination with escape throughout the show, and at the very end, one of the last things that ever happens on the show, he looks out a window and he sees a plane flying overhead, and he's like fantasizing about getting out of this meeting and being on that plane.
Gosh, that might be the last episode of the series.
It is the last episode, I think, but it stuck with me, and I think it calls back to this kind of idea that he's always on the lookout for a way to get out of here. He does spend a lot of time throughout the show on the road, going nowhere.
That's true.
Just randomly.
That's true. All right, so after that scene, we cut to the kitchen. Betty's in the kitchen alone this time. She's doing dishes, smoking with her rubber gloves on, trying to get the kitchen put back together.
And her hands are shaking.
They are. And then we hear the car pull up. So the car pulls up, the front door opens. She begins to take her rubber gloves off, and she's struggling. You can see that tremor in her hands. As she goes to the living room to see Dawn, who has come in, and she sees that his drunk ass has come in there with a dog. Mm-hmm. So not only has he ruined the birthday, he didn't bring the cake.
I get tickled because I'm like, where the hell did the dog come from?
Yeah, really.
I'm like, did he just pick that up off of somebody's lawn?
I think
Probably.
because it's the middle of the night.
So now then Betty sees that not only has he ruined everything, but he hasn't really ruined everything for Sally. It's Sally's birthday. She got the great present that he put together. She ended up with the cake. She's none the wiser. And now at the end of the day, she's got this great puppy. So for her, this has been an excellent day. Mm-hmm. The day has been ruined for Betty. And Betty just looks in there and she's like, I don't even know what to say. And she's looking at this dog as a chore. Dawn's going to get to go to work during the day. And now not only is she going to have to sit there and take care of those kids and make dinner and do laundry and do all the other things, but now she's going to have to take care of a dog too. So she's just like livid, but she doesn't have a ton to say. She's not reached that part of her story arc yet.
The breaking point yet.
Right.
No, in fact, she says, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to say. I don't know what to say.
She doesn't have the language for what she feels.
That's right.
And Don, he has, you have to think when he's sitting under that bridge contemplating his life and like realizing that he has just skipped out on his daughter's birthday and stolen the cake. He's like, well, shit, how am I going to fix this? How do I go home after that? And he's like, oh, I know. I'll go home with the puppy. Because how can you be mad at a man that comes home with a puppy? It was like it was him being manipulative. Him like gaslighting his family. He's like, I'm really a good dad. Look what I did. And, but this calls back to what I would rename the episode, which is earlier when he was talking to Rachel Minkin about her dogs. And she said that, what did she say? Like a girl.
Oh, I'll have to find it.
A girl needs a dog or something. She was talking about when she was a little girl and she didn't have anybody, but she had her dogs.
She says, for a little girl, a dog can be all you need.
A dog can be all you need, which I guess would be my title. It's a little long, but a dog can be all you need. And so,
but that's definitely why he brought that dog home.
I think so. I think he is thinking about Rachel, obviously, and this meant a lot to Rachel as a little girl, and he thinks that he should do that for his little girl.
So my title of the episode, and I think I forgot to say this quote earlier in the show, but it's when all the attendees have arrived at the party and they're all making that crappy small talk, which Dawn is just totally not into. And one of the guys at the party is saying, well, I guess Madison Avenue's treating you good, Dawn. We've got everything, this is all great. And he goes, yep, this is it. Dawn's just like, yep, this is it. So that's the title of the episode for me. Yep, this is it. So take that how you want it. Anything else before we wrap it up, girls?
No, I think we've done a great job.
I think so too. So
you don't even have to watch the show. You can just watch us.
That's right. So hopefully you're enjoying this podcast. Give us a follow out there in podcast land. We would love that. We would also love it if you came over to our YouTube channel, gave us a like, comment, subscribe. If you are watching on YouTube, let us know your thoughts on the episode. Let us know what you would name the episode, and for sure let us know if you see anything in the background of any of the episodes that we missed that you would have pointed out to talk about, like vintage collectibles or any decor in the set. We definitely want to know that. Anything else, girls? I'm signing off.
I think this is it.
All right, everybody, as always, make sure you stay tuned to see what Fatbird finds next, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.